Hi, peace be upon you, folks. In today's video, I would like to talk about the Dajjal, whom the Christians call the Antichrist. The Dajjal is the term used in Islam, meaning the deceiver. Um, so there are two hadiths which are statements that are recorded, sayings of the Prophet or some of his companions. I would look at the conquest of Constantinople uh, in present day Istanbul, well, Turkey. Um, and I would like to talk about there's a hadith, a narration that talks about the Dajjal being around for 40. Um, we don't know if it's 40 years, 40 days. Anyway, we'll get into that. And as we go, I might divert a little bit to talk about time and time reversal and maybe tie it all together and see if it makes sense. So initially, I had put open this these pages about a week ago, but I'm only doing the video now. So I mean, I hope it comes out coherently and it flows really well. So there are okay. We can first look at the conquest of Constantinople, which is all right. So there are in Islam there is the Quran, right, which is like the unchanged statement. Nobody can argue against it as long as you are a Muslim. And we are confident in the Quran because it was always memorized since the time of the Prophet. There had been hundreds of people memorizing it. So it's not something that can be changed without people realizing that it has been changed. The hadiths, on the other hand, they were recorded years later, and there's a science behind it, and they've come up with the science to decide which hadiths we can consider authentic, which hadiths we can consider maybe they are not authentic, maybe they are, but they're very good. So there are classes of hadiths of these statements. There is authentic, there is good, which they call Hassan, and there's the weak. It's weak hadith, but they still leave it there. And there are those that are reject outright, right? So in this video, I would like to initially I was thinking I'm going to make an argument that the Dajjal, the Antichrist, is with us presently. After looking at it a little bit, I decided, you know what, my mind is not made up. So I would rather just give the arguments for the Dajjal being here with us right now. The Antichrist is here with us, and also the arguments for why he's not with us right now. And then you can make up your mind. I find it interesting, and I hope I can present it in an interesting way. So, um, like I said, the Quran is the first statement, not changed. We are very confident in it. The Hadiths, on the other hand, there are some people who regard certain Hadiths as perfect. They were recorded perfectly as the Prophet said, right? Personally, I take every Hadith with a grain of salt, and there are different compilers of Hadiths, right? Just like you have the King James Bible or something like that. But there are two compilers that I prefer the most when it comes to Hadith. They are Muslim, right? This is the compilation, and the other one is called Bukhari. So Muslim and Bukhari, especially if it's Sahih, Sahih basically means correct. It means authentic. So a hadith that is found in Muslim or Bukhari that is authentic, some people would just take that outright. It's almost, well, nothing is almost the level of the Quran, but after the Quran, you can say, okay, Sahih hadith, especially if it's from Muslim or Bukhari. So those are my two. Those subjectively, those are my preferences. All right. But no matter what, I take all hadiths with a grain of salt, because the way I look at it is the same argument I make for the Bible. We didn't have a wide mass printing press if we look beyond 200 years ago, right? So a lot of things were written in the original language, and there were not a lot of sources. Okay. So by the time we get to where we are, if there were powers, like the Bible talks about, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but against principalities. If there were dark forces acting against us to deceive us, they could have altered a few things. All right. So that later, when there is mass printing, we accept these things as reality. And that is my issue also with prophecy. A lot of people decide right from wrong based on prophecy. And, how many years, even the people during the Jesus' time, the people during the prophet's time, peace be upon both of them, they all thought that these prophecies were being fulfilled, right? Every people think prophecy is being fulfilled. So what if you're wrong, or what if an evil entity altered that prophecy, right? And this is why I love the Quran. The Quran says that it's an instruction towards righteousness. It's a guidance, a set of instructions. So you look at a situation, you judge right from wrong based on the law of God, and then you decide what to do. You do not look at whether prophecy is being fulfilled or not, or who the right sides of the prophecy, blah, blah, blah. Because if it's not prophecy, it's sorcery, right? You let people believe a certain thing, and then you play events out, you manufacture events that look like prophecy so that you can control how people behave. All right. That said, like I said, I take every hadith with a grain of salt. Okay. So we want to look at arguments of whether the Dajjal, the Antichrist, is currently with us or not. First, let's look at the conquest of Constantinople, right? In this hadith, reported that the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, the last hour would not come until the Romans would land at Al-Armak or in Dabiq. An army, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I should. Okay. So the Romans will fight against, there will be an army of Muslims. Okay, maybe I should just read. When they will arrange themselves in ranks, the Romans will say, do not stand between us and those Muslims who took prisoners from amongst us. Let us fight them. And the Muslims will say, nay, by Allah, we would never get aside from you and from our brethren that you may fight them. They will then fight, and a third of the army would run, whom Allah would never forgive. And a third of the army, which would be constituted of excellent martyrs in Allah's eye, would be killed. And a third, who would never be put to trial, would win, and they would be conquerors of Constantinople. And as they would be busy in distributing the spoils of war amongst themselves, after hanging their swords by the olive trees, then Satan would cry, the Dajjal has taken your place among your family. They would then come out, but it would be of no avail. And so basically, this hadith is saying, after the conquest of Constantinople, and when the messenger talks about conquest, he's talking about Muslims taking over Constantinople. One argument would be that, yes, the Turks, the Ottoman Empire, they conquered Constantinople, right? Alhamdulillah. So there's a good argument for the fact that um, even if the Dajjal is not here, we've passed this point. So there is a possibility we're near the Dajjal, or there's a possibility the Dajjal is here. So, all right, let's look at the other prophecy. Move up, thank you. This prophecy talks about how long the Dajjal will be here, right? And I say there are different compilations of hadith. This is Sunan Ibn Majah, okay? This is his compilation of this hadith. Muslim and Bukhari, they usually have similar narrations. Their narrations are usually very similar, identical. So this is from Muslim. He talks about the same idea of the Dajjal being around for 40. So first, let's look at Sunan. All right, it says, all right, there's a part of the hadith here, would skip that. We said, O Messenger of Allah, how long will he stay on earth? So they're asking about the Dajjal, the Antichrist. He said 40 days, one day like a year, one day like a month, one day like a week, and the rest of his days like your days. We said, O Messenger of Allah, on that day, which is like a year, will the prayers of one day suffice us? He said, make an estimate of time and then observe the prayer. So in this compilation, right, it specifically says, the messenger says you'll be here 40 days. The first day is like a year. And there is no leeway to say, because the father asked him, according to this compilation, if, let's say, the first day is like a year, right? Instead of 24 hours, it's 24 times 365 or something like that, right? Days in a year, roughly. Should we just pray 5 times? We pray 5 times a day. But now this day that is so long, instead of 24 hours, is several hundred hours. Should we just pray the same 5 prayers? But according to this compilation, it seems like he's telling them, no, I sort the time out and count 24-hour cycles, right? That you would normally pray your 5 daily prayers. So within that long day, you should still be able to pray your 5 daily prayers for times 365 or something like that. Now, there's an argument for this as well. And in that, we might bring into possibility something like the solar, our solar system, our sun, our star, our star's twin, right? So the Nibiru system. And there is this idea that this planet, I've talked about it in 1 or 2 of my other videos, when this system comes in with our solar system and interacts with us, and there's this idea that it came during the time of Noah. It sometimes maybe it's a physical representation of a spiritual command or spiritual judgment. And some people believe it came during the time of Moses, etc. So the idea they say is the star from this system is like a cold star, and it would interact with our sun by recharging itself. In that process, most of the photons, the light rays, would divert from everywhere else, including the Earth, and they will be directed towards this cold sun, so that the earth will be dark for several days, right? It may be that whilst we go around the sun, there will be a long period when there will be darkness, and then a long period when there will be light, which would seem like it's one day, but it's not one day. So that's an argument for that, and that's a possibility for that. Now, if we look at it in Sahih Muslim, which, like I said, is my preference, but I still take it with a grain of salt. It says, so the prophet is talking to them now. I had only said that you would see after some time an important event, that the sacred house, the Kaaba, would be burnt, and it would happen and definitely happen. He then reported that Allah's Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, the Dajjal, Antichrist, the deceiver, would appear in my ummah, and he would stay in the world for 40. I cannot say whether he meant 40 days, 40 months, or 40 years. So that's all this hadith talks about it. There is no mention of prayer, whether we should time it and all that. So there's a possibility, yes, that there will be that long day. And there's a possibility also that both of these might hint at two things, right? All right. So this article written by Safia Sabrin Said is very good. She makes an argument for the fact that I hope I'm not misrepresenting her, but she makes an argument that the Ottoman conquest, the Turkish conquest of Istanbul, this is not the conquest of Constantinople, right? So we're still awaiting the conquest of Constantinople. And sometimes it's easy to decide one is wrong, one is right. But there's a possibility also that two parties that seem to oppose each other might both be right, but they're not looking at the whole picture, right? Just a possibility. And maybe both are wrong too, or maybe just one is right, right? So I support a little bit of her argument in that respect, because I've also said that you can't find one nation right now that abides by the Sharia, the law of Allah, the constitution of Allah based on the Quran. There are a lot of nations with Muslims in them, but there are not a lot of Muslim nations that you can say this country abides by the Sharia. I don't think there is one. And there are some that outright don't even pretend that they're trying to live by the Sharia. So for me, these are all Antichrist nations. I've called them that before. I've called them Dajjal nations before. Because when a person comes up, promises, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to better the economy, blah, 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 people decide. Some people decide based on his tribe, like in some of our countries. Some people decide based on this and that, his popularity, that he would be their savior. He would deliver them from the hardships they're going through. But this person never, and they swear upon a book, maybe the Quran or the Bible, to uphold a law that is different from the Quran or the Bible, which is just blows my mind. It doesn't make sense at all, right? And if you do not live by the law of God, you're basically saying we do not need God. We do not need his protection. We do not need his provision. We will take care of our affairs. And now you're electing somebody who is promising you based on this system of sovereignty that he will deliver you. So this is like a false messiah figure, right? He's not saying inshallah, by the will of Allah, by the grace of Allah. And how can you say by the grace of Allah when you do not abide by the law of Allah, right? So these are all disbelieving nations that we are surrounded by, right? After the prophet, there are some arguments that the first four caliphs who succeeded the prophet, the first four rulers, were righteously guided rulers. And then maybe one or two along the way were also good leaders. Some people can make an argument for that, right? But on the whole, a lot of people agree. I tend to agree to that as well, that it was not on the right path, right? Maybe they did their best, but it was not really Islam. In fact, first of all, there was a lot of inheritance of sultanship or kingship, which is not part of the religion, right? Like the only reason Solomon succeeded David was because Solomon was righteous and God chose him. It's not because he was his son. Okay. So anyway, she's making an argument that Constantinople has not been conquered. Um, and she makes so this is something you can go and read, right? Uh, it's very good, I guess. Um, Now there is also this guy called Imran Hussein, right? He has made an argument about the 40 days of the Dajjal on earth. A lot of people might disqualify this guy. Sometimes he might seem out there, right? But sometimes he says some things that even if they're not 100% correct, you might be like, okay, that's outside the box, right? Sometimes you need somebody to think outside the box. Yes, you cannot just go around uh, saying you've discovered the truth about the matter, but I think sometimes we can entertain certain things, although we shouldn't go too far. And I guess that's the fear sometimes. People do not want to think outside the box because they're afraid they might stray too far, right? I understand that as well. So basically, he's saying the 40, the 40 days of the Dajjal shouldn't be taken literally, right? He's saying the first day was when Britain basically was the ruling body. The second day would be when America is the ruling body, which we are in now, right? Because according to the first hadith we looked at, he said the first day is like a year, second day is like a month, third day is like a week, and then the fourth day is like one of our days, right? Like our days. So for the rest of the 40 now, right? So he's saying the third day will be when Israel is the ruling body. Now, there might be something to it, but I do not agree to it. But I think, you know, like you can build on it, right? Not this exactly. So anyway, let me make my argument on um after I make my argument on why it's possible we're living in the Dajjal time. I would like to talk about time and time reversal. What I mean by time reversal is this. We try to look at time as a linear event, but sometimes I like to think of time as a unfolding of events, unfolding of prophetic events, right? So if you look at, for example, when the Messiah, Isa, whom the Christians they call Jesus, right? I think it was Yom Kippur. It was one of their feast days when he entered the temple and he read from Isaiah, right? He read, I think we should just look it up. Uh, he read from Isaiah. Uh, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. Blah, 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 to deliver the captives. All right. So basically, what he did was he went to the temple. He said he read part of the prophecy. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and to release from darkness the prisoners, right? This continues, right? To proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of the Lord. But he didn't get to this part, right? So it's almost like I've come, but there will be a reversal of time, right? Like this particular prophecy would stop, would be paused, and then we'll get back to it later, right? I see something like that similar in Surah Al-Kahf, wherein Moses, now Muslims do not like to look at symbolisms because the Prophet didn't teach us that. But the Christians look at Jesus as the fish, right? Jesus is considered the fish. So there's a background to this story, but we'll not get into it because that's not the point of this video. Basically, Moses and his servant boy, can't remember who it was. He was also a prophet later, I think. So he said, I will not cease until I reach the junction of the two seas or travel for a long period. But when they reached the junction between them, they forgot their fish, and it took its course into the sea, slipping away. So when they had passed beyond it, Moses said to his boy, bring us our morning meal. We have certainly suffered in this our journey much fatigue. He said, did you see when we retired to the rock? Indeed, I forgot they are the fish, and none made me forget it except Satan, that I should mention it. And it took its course into the sea amazingly. Moses said, that is what we were seeking. So they returned, following their footsteps. So the background, a little bit of the background, just because to make this clear, it's like that was the sign of where they would find the person they were looking for, somebody that God had given certain knowledge that Moses wanted to learn from, right? So the sign, I think, was that at the point where you would find this person, you would lose the fish, something like that. So they returned basically following their footsteps. This is not a correct view. This is just something that came to my mind, right? But what came to my mind was it's almost like Jesus, um, represented by the fish, continued, let's say, with the Torah of Moses for a while, but then uh, there was like a break, right? Moses continued, but I guess the Jews continued, but then they had to come back. There was like a reversal in time to take off so that the prophetic timeline of Jesus can continue, right? So it's like, oh, we left Jesus somewhere. Let's go back, right? This happened to me last time again. Battery. All right. So anyway, for me, this looks a little bit like time reversal as well, but at least prophetic reversal, right? Now we had looked at the different hadiths. Hopefully now we can explain them, right? Okay. Before I try to explain it, why I think my argument for the Dajjal being here, the Antichrist, the conquest of Constantinople, right? Here it says, so basically they said that Dajjal will, I mean, we can look at this as well, right? Where he would arrive from. So it's a place between, I think this says Sham and Iraq, right? That's why you take hadith with a grain of salt. Another hadith says between Yathrib, which is like Medina and Iraq. So basically, they're saying he arrives in the Middle East. He'll be from among the Jews. Somebody might look into Wahhabism, right? And the deal that was made with the House of Saud, right? A lot of people believe, in fact, the House of Saud, some of them are Jews. Um, so there's a possibility that, in fact, this prophecy has been fulfilled, right? The Dajjal was joined by a bunch of Muslims and Jews, right? And now they represent themselves as the keepers of the Holy Land of Mecca and Medina. There's a possibility to that. Somebody can look into that, take it with a grain of salt. Um, what I want to look at, um, where it talks about okay, it's the conquest of Constantinople, right? So basically, after they've conquered Constantinople, right? They've conquered Constantinople. They would be busy afterwards, hanging their swords by the olive trees, and Satan will cry that Dajjal has taken his place upon your family, amongst your family. And then they would come out, but it would be of no avail. Let's save that and let me show you a verse in the Quran, and then I'll get back to it. In Surah Al-Imran, um, verse number 152, or maybe 153 if you count the first verse, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It says, and Allah had certainly fulfilled his promise to you when you were killing them by his permission, until when you lost courage and fell to disputing about the order and disobeyed after he had shown you that which you love. Among you are some who desire this world, and among you are some who desire the hereafter. Then he turned you back from them defeated, that he might test you, and he has already forgiven you, and Allah is the possessor of bounty for the believers. So in this verse, the context is the Muslims they had fought a battle against a bigger army when they were a smaller number. They won that battle. In this other battle, they were so confident because of their numbers, right? They had grown, right? And they were so sure of their victory. But during the fight, they were winning, obeying the prophet's command. The archers were where they're supposed to be as the prophet commanded. But then they started seeing the disbelievers fleeing the battlefield, leaving all these riches. Instead of fighting the battle and then later collecting the riches and let the prophet distribute if he's going to for the poor, the needy, and all that, some people started, right? They saw the victory, they saw the riches, so Allah showed them what they love. They disobeyed. So they left their positions and they started collecting these things, right? So Allah caused them to be defeated, to be turned back in defeat. When I look at this prophecy here, right, I think something similar. A lot of times we read events as if it's the same day. Oh, they were fighting. All of a sudden, they hang their swords on the olive trees, and then the next minute, no. Sometimes I don't think of it like that. It's like when you have a dream or a prophetic dream, things can happen on the same day, but they play out in years, right? So some of these things are not meant to be. I think they're symbolic. So if you think about it in relation to that verse we just read in the Quran, right? This is almost like Muslims were getting victory. They were taking over the land, spreading Islam, spreading a system of justice upon the earth. Then they started falling in love with the world, right? Then they started disputed. Oh, we don't even need to put the Sharia of Allah. Oh, jihad is not even part of it anymore. everybody had their argument. Oh, the jihad of the pen is so great. All kinds of arguments. So now they disputed about the order, right? So show them that which they love. They fell to disputing about the order, right? About what jihad is supposed to be about. It became a thing for powerful and rich families to get more money, more fame, and things like that. So then they were turned back in defeat, right? So there's that possibility, right? That they were no longer fighting jihad. So they hung up their swords. And when they did that, Satan basically the Dajjal went into their families. And now they're trying to fight, but they're weak. They're divided. Look at the colonization of Africa. Look at what the French did in Algeria and Tunisia. Look at what the British did in West Africa. Look at what they did in India, in Pakistan, right? So now let's look at this hadith of the 40. The Dajjal will be in 40, right? They say the first day is like a year. The second day is like a month. Here is another possibility, I think. I was looking at the Industrial Revolution, right? I decided to just put it into Google, into Bing, the AI, the chat AI. But basically, some people have divided the Industrial Revolution into four, some have divided it into five. And these are basically the years of the Industrial Revolution, right? Now, the Ottoman Empire fell around this time, okay? And then there was no like, as bad as the Ottoman was, but it was the body of Islam at the time. And anyway, let me not make an argument for or against it. That's not what this is about. So basically, this is a list of the industrial revolutions, right? Now, I put it into Bing. I say compare speeds, and this is just a screenshot of a chart I had with Bing. I say compare speeds of transportation and communication. Now, if you look at the industrial revolution, there are a lot of things you can talk about. The GDP, increase in GDP, right? That production, there were more bridges, more roads. That's one way to look at it. I feel like the easiest way to look at it is speeds of transportation and communication. Because during the time of the Prophet, if you want to send a message from one country to another, you'd have to use a horse or a camel. If you want to travel with goods, you would have to use a ship that uses a sail, or a camel. You get goods, or horse like draws a carriage. You get the goods, you transport them back to the other place, right? So that was the speed of transportation and communication. So basically, I'm asking Bing, compare speeds of transportation and communication for a few distances after each industrial revolution and before the first industrial revolution, right? So compare the subsequent revolution and then back to the very first one. Say do it in a table if you can. I appreciate it. And basically, this is the result, right? According to Bing. So now, if we're looking at, this is before first industrial revolution, right? So this would be basically during the time of the Prophet, right? How the speed of things, right? London to Liverpool, 200 miles. New York to London, 2,500 miles. Beijing to Paris. London to New Delhi. London to New York, right? 4 days by coach from London to Liverpool. That's before the Industrial Revolution. This would be during the time of the Prophet. If we take a long distance, right? 6 months by caravan or sailing ship, right? 6 months by caravan, around, let's say, 5,000 miles. 6 months by caravan or ship, right? 6 weeks by sailing, New York to London, right? After the first industrial revolution, right? This went from 4 days to 4 hours. Okay. And if let's look at this distance, 5,000 miles. Okay, let's stick to this for now, Beijing to Paris. Now let's look at something that covers both caravan and ship. So let's look at London to Delhi. It's 4,500 miles, which is similar to this one, right? It says 6 months, right? 6 months, here 3 weeks. 3 weeks is roughly a month, but not exactly. 6 weeks, let's say 6 times 4, which is 24, right? So 8 times faster after the first industrial revolution, right? And this would be the same speed of like communication, right? Because after that, they started inventing the telegraph, right? Um, so 8 times faster. So we're still not, basically what I'm trying to say is, if we look at events during the prophet's time, how much could you achieve in a year in terms of transportation, GDP, production, communication? How much could you do in a year? That would be basically the measurement. So when the Dajjal comes, by this analysis, right, the first day of the Dajjal, which is the day which is like a year, right, things would speed up so much that what you could achieve in uh, in a year during that time, you should be able to achieve it in one day in this time, right? That's the first day of the Dajjal, the Antichrist. And then the second day of the Dajjal, right? His day, which is a year of the previous, like the time of the prophet, right? Now that day should be what we were able to do, right? The second day, right, should be what we were able to do for a month for the first day. So which is a month times a day, a year for prior, right? So the first day would be like a year during the prophet's time, things you can achieve, right? During that time, we are in the first day of the Dajjal. When we step up technology, so that if we were doing something for a month now, this month I'm talking about, each day is like a year of previous times, right? Now, if we can do something for a month in this first day of the Dajjal, when we go to the second day of the Dajjal, everything we can do in that month would speed up so much that we can do it in one day of the second day of the Dajjal, right? And then the next step of the process, when we get the third day of the Dajjal, everything we were able to do for a week of his second day, right? And in that second day, each day, we were able to do a month of his first day. And that month of his first day, each day, we were able to do a year of previous times, right? So now in the third day, which is like a week, right, we should be able to do what we were able to do in the second day for a week. We should be able to do it in one day for that third day. That would be that period. Until when he actually comes into our world as a physical human being, right? So if we're looking at this analysis, at first it looks like, okay, maybe, but the Dajjal will not still be here by this analysis. Because, okay, let's look at this, right? From London to New Delhi, 6 months. Now, if we move to after the second industrial revolution, it becomes 8 hours, right, to do this distance, right? 8 hours, and it's roughly, right? So if we times it by 3, that's 24 hours, which is a day, right? If you times this by 3, right, it will be a year and a half. So somewhere in between the first industrial revolution and the second industrial revolution, according to this analysis, we would have entered the first day of the Dajjal, a day in which each day is like a year of the previous, of the time of the prophets, right? Basically, okay? But now, after the third industrial revolution, it's not like things in terms of transportation got a lot better. It's basically the same, right? So maybe transportation is not the best. If we're looking at communication, right? Here, it's still 6 weeks by sailing, right? From London to New York. Now it's 10 days, right? By steam, ship. It's 5 minutes by telegraph. We've already exceeded a day, which is like a year. We've exceeded it. In fact, we may have entered the second day. In fact, when it comes to communication, now it's instant by internet. Can you get faster than that? I don't think. Okay. So basically, it's like we've completed that. But now it's like, okay, is it possible that there is still a communication, a transportation that is way faster than this, so that a day, right? Let's say 8 hours, or let's say instead of eight, right? Um, let's say 12 hours, right? Because that would be when you times it by two is 24 here for one day, and then it will be two here, would be six, which would be 12 months, which is 1 year. So a day, which is like a year, right? So if you want to do from this point to the next point, which is like the second day, right? Instead of 12 hours, um, you want to do within a day, you want to do something that you'll be able to do. This would be 12 times 2 times 1 week, well, times 1 month, right? But do we have such fast transportation? Well, some people talk about underground transportation. So if you think about it, there is this idea that, oh boy, I should check this. Okay, maybe I'll do it. There's this idea that whatever technology we have, the military has far better technology. So even the artificial intelligence that we call artificial intelligence, this is not even what the military is considering artificial intelligence. Okay. Chat, GPT, and those kinds of things. No, those are like child's play. Those are like toys. Okay. So whatever technology we have, you should expect that the most advanced military is already like 30, 40 years more advanced, right? There's also this belief, which you might call it conspiracy theory, but I think it's true. And I'll tell you why I think it's true. For me, I do not need to see proof of certain things, because who's going to come up with this proof? How am I going to prove that the most powerful world leaders have made deals with aliens? Okay. Oh, and this is why I should even bring up Apollo. Okay, let me just pause this so that I can connect my charger. So I'm back. Now, people, let's say the most powerful world leaders have made deals with aliens or genes or fallen angels, as some people call them. How am I going to get proof for that? Who's going to trust a picture somebody puts on the internet? So for me, it's about analysis of history. Before, in the past, people have been sacrificing in rituals, sacrificing people to demons. Am I to believe that these fallen, these demonic, these devil of gene, am I to believe they all of a sudden gave up those things and now we all just so-called civilized, right? The Quran also tells us that there were men from mankind who sought refuge in men from jinn kind. I'm not, why would I believe that stopped? Even within our cultures, there are, we know of, we hear about leaders who sacrifice people in rituals. They catch ritualists all the time, right? Even in Eastern Africa, right? There are people who hunt these albino people, right, for rituals. So this is a common practice. These devils do not give up these things. Now, a lot of people believe The technology is technology of the fallen angel, technology of what they call the gods, technology of the giants, whatever, the Nephilim. That might be right. I want to believe, though, that this is technology from Adam, who was taught the names of all things. The devils stole it, they have it, they don't know all about it, they cannot, like, they know how to use it. You can drive a car, but it doesn't mean you can create one, right? But so now some people are using that technology. And anyway, we're building up ourselves through it. So there is a possibility that there are technologies far more advanced than what we see in our reality. So it's possible that, in fact, we are in the last period, the day which is like a week, right? All that is left is for him to come into our existence for our days so that we see him as a physical person who's maybe combined with AI, quantum computing, and all that. Because we hear about dimensions and opening of portals, right? I mean, how much more can we get in terms of that, right? So basically, I'm saying there's a possibility, if you look at it from this concept, instead of thinking it will be a day. Now, yes, there's a possibility also, because sometimes prophecies have dual fulfillment, right? So sometimes it's not like one person has to be right, you can both be right. So there's a possibility also that when this system comes, a lot of people think it's an evil system. I don't think it's an evil system. I think it's just a system that comes with the command of the judgment of the Lord. When it comes, the sun will redirect its light rays so that no light will hit the earth, although there will be infrared and heating, according to what Mike from around the world said in Pastor Paul Begley's channel, right? So um, you might have a long period of darkness, which would be like a long night, right? And a long day, okay? But as far as this hadith is concerned, looking at the two sources that don't have the same uh, uh, content, right? So, um, how should I tie this in? I've talked a little bit about in my other videos about some of the rituals, right? If you look at if you look at what goes on in the world, um, I believe there are a lot of rituals at play. Okay, whatever they do, some it's like you take the kneeling for example. So here, these are some of my videos which I talked about some of the rituals they're playing out. Um, something I wanted to. There was a short one I wanted to look at. Okay. Uh, there's this ritual which they had after the George Floyd thing, which was take a knee, right? So I related it to this video from 300, I think it's Rise of something, right? It's like when soldiers are on a boat, right? They have when they are going to impact, they have to take a knee and hold on to like the rope of the boat. So it's basically to take a knee. It's a ritual basically of bracing for impact, right? So I mean, there are a lot of rituals that I believe are going on. Even when you look at the way the United States was set up, for me, it's a big ritual, right? They have their Messiah. So that's why in another video, I talk about the religion of the Antichrist. Okay. This is the religion of sun worship, right? Whether you consider the sun, S-U-N, or the S-O-N, sun worship. Okay. The idea that Nimrod, through magic, gave birth to himself is about never dying, immortalizing yourself. So you and your child, you're one are the same, right? Nimrod basically impregnated his wife. Now, a lot of Christians will give me flack for that and say, oh, I don't understand certain things. Anyway, so when you look at Revelation 12, the Christians might be more familiar with this. It talks about the woman clothed with the sun, the moon at her feet, on her head a crown of 12 stars, right? In one of these videos, I talk about even how the United States was set up, how they initially had 13 colonies. So if you take Virginia, which was one of the 13 colonies, right, it would be Virginia and 12 stars, 12 other colonies. So a woman, the virgin, and 12 stars. Now, if you think about the son that was born, right, from the woman, that's the Washington, D.C. Where do you find Washington, D.C.? Right at the border of Virginia and Maryland, so which is the Virgin Mary, right? This is their ritual. This is their Messiah. Who is their Messiah? Apollo, the king of the bottomless pit. Okay, they're not talking about Jesus. They're talking about their Messiah. Okay, so there is a spirit that rules certain powers. There is a spirit that rules certain entities. Even I don't want to get too deep into like. There's this video called what is it? Okay, if you look at this picture here, it's from a video called iPad Go 2. In that video, they show the Statue of Liberty, and there's like a star below it. Stars are basically fallen angels, right? So it's almost like there's an entity also there. They put a symbol there as well, right? Give me your, it's like a perversion of the scripture. So when they talk about liberty, they're not talking about being free from the flesh, being free from the things that hold you back spiritually, that tie you to the earth, right? The desires that are unwanted, being one with God. They're not talking about that. They're talking about licentious freedom. They're talking about doing what you want as long as you're happy, being sexually promiscuous, blah blah blah. The Statue of Liberty is not, it's not something that pushed you towards spiritual ideals. Okay, so there are powers that rule certain. There are forces, dark forces that rule certain powers, and these people, if you pay attention, they pay homage to these powers. You know, these powers control certain seats of government. They control certain seats of power. Anyway, so there's a possibility, even based on that, that the now, is it Apollo from the bottomless pit, whom some call Abaddon, right? Is he the Antichrist? Or is he the one who's going to come as the white horse? And then I have this theory that a lot of people are looking for Jesus to come from the sky. I don't think that's how it's coming. It's possible, maybe. I don't know. That's why we should all seek a relationship with God so that we cannot be deceived, okay? But some people are too set in their ways. They think they have all the facts because they've read a few books. And who's been controlling these books? We don't know. People have been altering things. So I believe it's possible there will be one Antichrist, and then another Antichrist will come and kill this one, the first one. A lot of people will then believe in the second Antichrist, thinking, oh, he's killed this Antichrist. He must be the real Christ. Okay. So Apollo is a good substitute, whether he's on earth right now as somebody or he's not truly merged with the person. We don't know, right? Because some people, like they say, they talk about certain opening dimensions, right? People go, and there are doorways on the earth. Even in the heavens, there are doorways. There is a narration that talks about the prophet, peace be upon him, was talking to the angel Gabriel, alayhi salam. And then he heard a noise in the heaven, and then another angel descended. And then Angel Gabriel narrated to the prophet that this is a door that has never been opened before. And this is an angel that has never come down before. So there are different gateways. All right. Even in the Quran, they talk about Allah is the Lord of the ways of ascent, the ways of rising. Right. He talks about certain days that are like 1,000 years, certain days that are like 50,000 years. So there are different commands and how they are fulfilled on the earth. Okay. So Anyway, these are some of the possibilities. Um, I may have left a few things out that I wanted to get to, but I think basically I got to the meat of the issue. All right, folks, peace be upon you.